Hey guys, so today I'm going to be teaching you all about using Copics to color the skin. I'll be going over the type of paper to use, the color combinations you should pick, and how to blend them. So let's get right into it with talking about the paper. So a lot of the times when people are trying to use Copic markers, they will unknowingly use the wrong type of paper. They often use mixed media paper or just regular printer paper, and neither of those are going to work very well for you. Copic markers especially can be really wet, so they will bleed through printer paper so fast and you won't be able to really use them. Likewise with a mixed media paper, which is pretty thick, rough textured, that's going to dry out your marker really fast, and Copics are pretty expensive, so I don't know about you, but I would not want to waste any ink if I could help it. So really choosing your paper is key. I like to use this sketchbook specifically made for markers. It's by Be Creative, and the paper is great. It's thick enough that it doesn't bleed through, but the texture is super smooth, so it doesn't dry out your markers. Okay, so once you have a good paper to use, go ahead and choose 3 colors of the skin tone that you want to do. The same rules apply to any skin tone that you do, but for today, I'm going to be using a pretty light tone, so I'm going to choose these 3 markers. They're E000, E00, and E21. And like I said, the same rules do apply to any skin tone, so if you wanted to go darker, you could choose these 3 colors. Or anything in the same family, as long as there are 3 similar colors that you can blend together. So the first step that I always do is I take my lightest shade, which this one is E000, and with this marker, I'm just going to lay down a flat base color over all of the skin. And sometimes if you feel like your marker is too wet, you can always turn it upside down for about 5 seconds, and that will let the ink run to the other side, so it won't be so wet and runny anymore. So after the base layer is down, you're going to use that same marker and go over all the areas where you think you might want a shadow to be. This step is kind of experimental because since you're using the lightest color, if you do make a mistake, you're not really going to see it in the end. So go ahead and experiment with a little lighting. Just try the shadows where you think they'll look the best, and if they don't look good, don't worry about it because you won't see it. So when I'm shading, I like to focus my shadows under the nose, under the eyes, under the bottom lip, the corners of the mouth, the sides of the face, anywhere where a naturally occurring shadow will fall. And you can learn about shadows by doing studies, or really just looking at a reference photo. But like I said, you can just play around with it at this stage without any consequences. So I'm just going to speed this along a little because I was just playing with some shadows. And right about here, I put down a shadow on her nose that I didn't super like. So that's a perfect example of how you're not going to see that at the end. Even though I don't like it, it's totally fine. Alright, so when most of your shadows are where you think they look the best at, that's when you're going to go in with your second darkest color. I used E00, and what you do with this marker is you're really just going over the shadows that you already put down to make them more defined. I like to put these shadows under the eyes, right on the bottom of the nose, under the lip and the corners of the mouth, where the brow bone is, and definitely where the hairline is. Really just wherever the shadows were already. I would highly recommend doing studies on lighting, or at least using a reference photo when you are doing your shading, because that really helps you if you haven't drawn a lot already. If you're maybe a beginner and you don't know where shadows are, that would really help you, because you could see, like what I just did, how the shadows go in the, I guess, the crook spaces of the collarbone and that little dip in between the collarbones. Just adding little accurate details like that is going to bring so much more life to your drawings. Also, when laying down this layer, try to make sure that you are using your marker in the same direction as the face is going, like the planes of the face. That's going to help your blending out a lot later on. But we'll talk about blending it out a little bit better later. So for now, once you're done with this layer, go ahead and go in with your last color. It should be the darkest one. I'm using E21. And with this color, you want to be a little sparse in using it. This is just for the darkest shadows on the face. Or skin in general. I just said face because this is a portrait. But it'll be for areas like right on the neck where, like under the chin. The bottom of the nose again. I like to put it at the bottom of the lip. It'll just be where the really dark shadows are going to be. You definitely don't want to overdo this one because if you try to shade a lot with this color, you're not going to be able to blend very well with the lightest parts of the face. So I'm just going to finish laying those shadows down. And again, I would really encourage you to look at a reference photo or try to familiarize yourself with lighting to be more accurate with your shadows. So next up, we're going to add a little bit of life to this face by giving her some blush. This is a step you don't necessarily have to do, but I like to do it just so she has some blood in her veins. So I'm using E93. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply this to her cheeks and nose. If I was doing a full body coloring, I would apply this color to places like the shoulders, the elbows, the fingers, the knees, really anywhere where there's a joint, and it really just gives so much life to the coloring process. So for now, I will just be putting this on her cheeks and nose, and I'm going to be using really light flicking motions in a controlled manner. And immediately right after I put that color down, I take the lightest color that we were using for the skin, so I was using E000, and I go in and blend that really well. It's super important when you're working with Copics to make sure that you kind of work fast if you want to blend well, because once the alcohol dries, it's really hard to get a nice smooth blending. So I just finished blending that out, and now we're going to move on and give her some lips. She looks really weird without them right now. So I'm actually going to use the same color I just used, E93, and I'm going to go in with that and follow the lines I already have for her lips. There's not really a line for the top one, but I just eyeball it. You can do your mouths any way you like, but this is how I like to do mine. I always tell people to trust the process when they are coloring, because at first it might not look that great, but as you keep going and adding layer and layer, it starts to come together. So you see, just adding this lip color really, really brought everything together. But that is just the first layer. So I like to go back in with a slightly darker shade just for the top lip. I typically don't put it on the bottom lip. I'm going to be using R22, and I just go over the whole top lip, just one even color. And just by doing that, it gives the lips everything they need, I think. Okay, so after your lips are applied, everything looks pretty laid out. So now the last step that you have to do is grab the lightest marker for the skin tone that you were using. I was using E000. And you're just going to go over basically the whole coloring all over again. And this is, since you're using the lightest color again, it's really going to blend everything together without adding any darkness to the piece. I told you to use pretty light strokes with the other shadow colors from before, but with this one you could be kind of heavy with it just to make sure that everything is all smooth and blended together. And just like that, your skin is all done. Although something that I like to add to most of my drawings is freckles. I'm a sucker for freckles. So the darkest color for skin I used was E21, so I'm going to go a little darker and do E33 for her freckles. And when you're adding freckles, you want to be super, super light, just really quick tapping on the skin. You definitely don't want to leave it on there for very long or else it'll bleed. And with that extra step, she is all complete. I think she looks pretty good. I really hope this helped you out, and I wish you the best of luck on your art journey. Thanks so much for watching!